Hey,
Hi,
I'm Alex,
and I'm Val.
and we are here to talk about Pyomai.
Season 4, Episode 5 of The Sopranos.
Yeah, and it's an amazing episode. I really like this one.
I wonder how many times we've said it's an amazing
all
episode.
of them. Every single one.
I wish we had something different to say.
Yeah, but they are all kind of... I don't... Actually, you know what? I didn't say that on Christopher.
Oh.
I didn't start off by saying that.
I think I did.
Yeah, we started off that conversation rather differently.
Yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
So we just sat down. I feel like we've had a little bit of a break, but maybe we haven't.
I don't know.
Anyways, we just
We're
sat
here.
down. We watched Pyomai.
Mm-hmm.
We took some notes.
Yeah.
I think this is a really important episode in terms of decoding some of the symbolism in this show.
Yes.
I feel like some of the things that, some things we talked about and some things that we haven't talked about before in as much depth, really come out here. I think the color thing really,
Yeah.
they start to kind of establish some code of some sort. Again, I haven't really decoded it.
Well, I feel like they were
say,
doing
but-
that a lot in the early days of
They
the show. I feel
were.
like they're revisiting it. They kind of are grabbing that
Yeah,
aspect
but there
of
was
things
something
again.
here with like yellows that we saw last episode too, and blues,
Reds were the ones
and
for me.
reds. There's definitely, and then we had characters switching between those colors, and some of them keeping those
Yeah.
colors. Anyways, that also the animal thing.
I think, yeah, that's really what's getting established right now because I feel like that's a new symbol that's being introduced right now.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
we've always had our ducks,
well, yeah, we've always that's true.
but
Actually,
I feel like different animals mean
actually,
different
right from
things.
the beginning, yeah. Yeah, I think it's really just getting expanded upon. You're right. The ducks have been there since the pilot episode. Also, what animals bring out of characters, the kind of aspects of their personalities that are kind of drawn out by their interaction with animals. I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm yawning. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's, I think, something really important. And then I think, I don't know, there's something too with the stuff with Bobby that's really interesting that I wanted to talk about.
I feel like
today.
he's starting
him
a
as
new,
a character.
His arc is kind of it's really
Yeah.
going somewhere right now for the first time.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of being brought into the mob through Janice in a way that hasn't happened before.
Yeah, well,
it-
and yeah, maybe we'll just start there.
Sure.
We know that Janice is kind of seen. We had Ralphie refer to when he was with Janice, and I'm sure Richie said something or other about it. Being with Janice could be something important for someone to do or something useful for a mob guy to do, right? Being actually being part of the family does hold some weight, right? So Janice is technically kind of an important pawn for these guys in some ways
I
too.
mean,
I
Ralph-
don't think Bobby sees it that way. Some
Yeah, I
characters
mean, Ralph
do
blatantly
see it.
brought that up recently in terms of...
But we see
his
how it
advantage.
actually, in some ways benefits Bobby today, his association with her. So,
So you feel that Bobby...
well, it depends on
yeah.
how you look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of Bobby not, Junior not kicking Bobby out of his position or whatever, right? And,
But that's also because he's following Janice's advice.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It shows how it can be beneficial to the characters. What I meant is I don't know if that's a really beneficial thing for Bobby to be doing. I don't think his wife dies and he should throw himself back into, you
Right.
know, harassing union
Right.
members at a bar. But if he wants to be successful in the mob,
Right.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I guess it's
In
interesting.
Sopranos world.
It's
Good.
interesting, yeah, that it's benefiting him just through following the advice of Janice, as opposed to just benefiting from her stature within the family.
Yes. Well, and we also see this with Tony and Pyomai, right? And his advice with these races. Mm-hmm. And it is kind of happenstance. It's obviously not Tony's knowledge of horses or Janice's knowledge of the mob, even per se. But these characters are following the advice of Janice and Tony, and they're benefiting from it.
But interestingly, I mean, for Tony, he gives this advice, and it's actually a fluke that Pyomai wins
Totally.
that first
No,
one. It
that's
actually
what
has
I'm-
nothing
that's
to do
exactly
with
what
his
I'm
advice.
saying.
Yeah. So, I mean, actually, who does follow Tony's advice, really, in the beginning? Nobody. It actually has nothing to do with what he said. It's just a coincidence that
Right.
it lines up.
Right.
And Bobby does follow Janice's advice, but the interesting thing is the manipulation that's happening.
Yeah.
Janice has very ulterior motives
what you
for
mean. Yeah.
pushing forward
Yep.
Bobby in this way.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, actually, like in terms of the color thing we were talking about with Janice. She's shown wearing like a lot of vibrant reds in a very kind of extreme way. And a lot of the time it's kind of with the backdrop of the other characters at Bobby's house, Bobby and his kids wearing these muted blacks, muted grays, things that we've often seen associated with the mob characters. So there's like an absence of color. And I feel like the show is very deliberate when they do include color on a character or in a scene, that it's a choice to include that as opposed to these kind of monotone color schemes.
Yeah.
And I think that like Janice, there's something artificial about this like brightness that's there. And we see her kind of acting as a character that she isn't, as this kind of caring, like motherly, helpful,
good cook.
Yeah, good cook, which is, I mean, she's none of these things at all. Like it's a complete act. And there's something that really stands out in that situation. I think she's trying to create a persona, and it's maybe like reflected a little bit by that.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, for her, it's interesting, like her just really kind of taking these opportunities to manipulate. So talking about the times where she had a shotgun in her mouth.
Yeah.
Talking to Bobby about how he was depressed and saying how you can't do this because you have kids. And she's bringing up Harpo. So this emotional manipulation where she brings up things where she doesn't really have... She shouldn't be bringing them up. I mean, in the case of Harpo, she says, one thought of Harpo without his mother, and I couldn't do it. Yeah. Well, the reality is that Harpo is living his life without his mother. He's not there with Janice, so that's not really a fair thing
Poor Harpo.
Poor Harpo. Spoiler, we never meet Harpo.
Oh, man.
Unfortunately. But it's interesting how she is using that as emotional manipulation. It's similar to the ZD. Like she walks in on Bobby on a day where he's actually doing really well. How's it going? Well, oh wow, because this is like a change. Then she takes that as a moment to like strike.
Yeah.
Why don't we have the ZD?
Yeah.
She doesn't want the Chinese because of the MSG. Right. Like she has a way of kind of pushing things forward in a way that she wants, and then she uses the food as a tool to manipulate Bobby and get what she wants, which is something we've seen in the show before, seeing food being used as manipulation.
Yeah. No, and it's even like, because like she kind of takes this moment, like, yeah, like you said, like his good day, but he also, like, she can see that like her other manipulations are kind of working. Like he's like, we should go out for dinner. Yeah. Right? And she like totally jumps on that aspect of it, right? Yeah. Like sees him, sees him softening towards her, right? Like he has this conversation with Junior about her. And I love what Junior has to say. He's like, enjoy your lasagna, just don't come rushing to me. Like
he knows. He's always known about Janice.
Oh yeah, he like maybe sees Janice more clearly than most people.
Yeah.
So I liked that line. Enjoy your lasagna, just don't come running to me.
Yeah, it's interesting though. It's interesting to see Bobby partaking, for instance, like when he goes to the bar and he's saying you could have a bullet in your head here, here, and here. Like we haven't seen him as that type of character up until this point.
It's in such a funny Bobby way though. Like it's like so non-threatening, but then it is. It's really, he's pretty good at it. Right. He like walks out and pays for his drink. You know? Yeah. He's pretty smooth.
Yeah. What's next?
Want to talk about like Adriana and Chris?
Yeah, I do. I do want to talk about Adriana and Chris.
We can talk about, I don't know, like, so, like, this is, like, in an episode that's ostensibly about a horse, the first scene that we have, it takes place at the Crazy Horse, right? So, I don't know, again, we were talking a few episodes ago about that association, but we have this great opening scene of this episode where we see Adriana kind of, like, deep in thought, you know? Like, she's clearly going over this stuff with the FBI in her head, right? We see the eye behind her. We see Tony and Sil come in. They're looking for Chris. And then we have this, like, crooked vision, right? Like, we have this, like, tilted camera when she thinks Tony's on the phone saying FBI informant and, like, whatever, right? But he's really talking to Carm.
So about the estate papers.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and AJ.
And then we have her, like, peering into the window of the back, I guess that's her office at the time where they're beating up the guy, like, peering into the room and seeing this violence really for some of the first times, right? Like, she's not really exposed to a lot of the violence of the mob. Mm-hmm. It's always been, like, Jimmy Choos and nice bracelets. Yeah. And, like, but now that she's kind of, like, seeing this from this other perspective of an informant, right? Like of like she's on this other side. I think she's starting to see things really differently.
Absolutely.
You know, like had it been prior to all these events and like she walked in on Tony and Ralphie sitting in her office, she might not have really thought anything of it.
Yeah.
You know, but now she's like trying to listen into their conversation. It was like something about taxes too. It was like a really boring conversation.
Well, I think it was about like payments to one of their shell companies.
Yeah.
And they said, "We'll eat the taxes."
Right.
So it was like an illegal payment that they
Okay.
were going to be laundering through one of their shell companies. Anyway.
But you know, like she might not have thought anything of it at that point, but now she's like she has this different lens,
Yeah.
right? So even when we then like see her later at the hair salon and they call her and you know, they corner her at the mall and make her sit in the car, we can see how this like feeling of being followed or being watched or you know, playing sick so she doesn't have to go and be around Tony so that she doesn't have any information to then share, right? Like she really has to be thoughtful about how she lives her life now. And yeah, I don't know, like it's really I don't know, I just feel like we're in this episode there was kind of this point of view camera kind of thing going on at a number of times.
Yeah.
Especially with this kind of like spying or
Yeah. I
like,
think
surveilling.
absolutely.
People.
And I think
Yeah.
that there was actually some really interesting cuts there. Like when Adrienne is looking in through that room, we have this focus on her eye, which is also you can also compare that to the eye that's present in
the
Crazy
room.
Horse,
Yeah.
which, I mean, you can kind of see now there's this actual like literal link between those.
Yeah.
Like the FBI has an eye in the club.
Yeah.
It's compromised.
And some other eyes outside. Like they knew who came that night.
Right.
We don't
Yeah.
really know how they did, but they were like Vito and whoever and whoever. Yeah.
So we actually see Adriana focus on her eye looking in. And interestingly, there's an edit there to Janice looking through binoculars. So I feel like there's this theme that's kind of established early on in this episode of, kind of peering out and kind of gaining information for one's own purpose. And I think that that's a really interesting thing that then people do different things with. But there's always this kind of like self-serving aspect of it that happens at the end where everybody's kind of just trying to serve their interests.
Yeah, totally.
Even though Adriana's completely compromised and not serving her interests really because she's completely screwed, she's just trying to like survive and serve the situation that she's in.
Yeah.
And she is kind of spying. Janice is now looking out. She's trying to serve her own interests and to better herself.
Yeah.
To find herself with Bobby, to kind of move up this ladder, to have more influence.
Yeah, well, in terms of Adriana, right, like we have her for the first time kind of realizing that Pussy and Richie aren't in the witness protection program. Like she's getting more information again, right? Like kind of like seeing this violence going on with Chris being involved, right?
Yeah.
She's also like all of a sudden her perspective is totally changed on that, right? She just assumed they were in witness protection program. And then we see her you know, near the end of the episode when she or not near the end, but you know, somewhere in the second half of the episode when she makes Chris scrambled eggs, and eggs are a bad sign
Typically.
but she's trying to make him scrambled eggs and she's trying to like say like, oh, like, you know, what about Santa Barbara, like we have our whole lives ahead of us, right? So like she's not only like trying to, I don't know, like limit the amount of information that she's exposed to so she doesn't have to compromise herself to the feds, but she's also trying to manipulate Chris to get herself out of this
Trying to
situation.
plant ideas, which is very similar to what Janice is doing.
Totally.
And what everybody really
Totally.
does. I mean, everybody is kind of a manipulator
Yeah.
in this world.
But we sense really her like anxiety, right? Like she
Definitely.
does heroin in this episode, right? Which we don't see her doing that often. She's clearly still really hurt by the Danielle thing, right? Like she comes into that meeting and she's like, "Eat shit, Danielle," like,
Fair enough.
which is pretty funny. She's pretending to be sick, right? She's, it's her using heroin actually that really gets to me.
It's also, and we'll come back to this too, but like that, the heroin and kind of like as a symbol, there's kind of like multiple uses of the idea of horse, I feel like, in this episode between the heroin, the animal, the club.
Yeah.
And I think that they all kind of like mingle in different ways, but they're all things that bring comfort kind of to a character or like surface comfort or something.
Yeah, I like
and that's
that.
something I wanted to kind of get into later on with character's relationship with the animals. But I think it was interesting too, like with Adriana and her anxiety. For me, there was a parallel right away at the beginning of the episode where she's misreading Tony's conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of to this season already with Johnny Sack and Donnie Kaye in New York, where Johnny Sack sees him laughing and then reads it for kind of based on his own issues, and then takes it out on him later on by going and beating him up, where he feels like he's laughing about Ginny Sack's mole.
Right.
But he's not. And I feel like all these characters are just so stuck in their own world and can only see things through their lens and their, kind of frame of reference.
Yeah.
That they end up kind of like misjudging situations and being anxious or violent or acting out in ways that are not necessary.
Well, it's weird that you say this kind of like framing. Like we actually have in terms of the like the photography in this episode, we have a lot of important scenes that are framed in really interesting ways. Kind of like if we'll talk more about the end of the episode, but we kind of have the outdoors and the rain framed through the door of the stable, which is really similar to the shot that we get earlier of Carmela in the kitchen. And we're seeing her in this lit kitchen, and we're looking from the dark living room.
Wow, yeah.
And it's like almost a direct parallel of where that door is placed. But
I didn't think about that.
It's lit in the opposite way. Like the front room is lit in the scene with Pyomai, and the back room is lit with the scene with Carmela.
Good one.
Again, kind of those shots of peering in the windows and stuff like that. Like we see all these things framed, and I think that's. I don't know, again, we're really starting to get into the way that these characters, the way they view the world and the way that they interpret things, right?
Or the way that they're isolated. That's another aspect for me.
Yeah, totally. And there's these blockages. Even I feel like the way Junior's obsession, which I think is really funny, but I love this part, Junior's obsession with the court artist,
caricature artist,
right? He's basically that's how this guy sees me.
Yeah.
And he's really mad about that, right? It is really funny.
I liked it.
It's pretty amazing. I love that they created that for this episode, But anyway, so there was something about that kind of the way that things are framed that was standing out to me. But I might see some other ones. I'm just looking through my notes. I apologize.
There's more for me with Adriana being isolated from others too. Some things actually, there were some interesting scenes where she's with Agent Harris and I think Severino. So they're eating food, and Harris actually, after she leaves, she has IBS and she's running to the restroom. Harris is kind of eating his pastries and coffee, and there's a shot of him drinking coffee, eating pastries. Adriana is kind of left with the fallout of this anxiety and is gone while they're eating food and drinking coffee. Then there's an edit to Tony eating Carm's tomato sauce that she's made for him, saying oh, it's really good. And there's something about the decadence and indulgence of these characters just eating around Adriana, as she actually, in particular, having IBS, she can't even process food.
Right.
I thought was really interesting because there is this this indulgence aspect of the people around her that she can't really engage.
But it's interesting to think about that when we think about food as manipulation, though. I don't really know how that fits together, really, right? So if because we see that really used as a symbol of manipulation. So I
think Carmela does that too, because when she's feeding the tomato sauce, she also wants these financial documents signed.
Yeah.
And talking about the manipulation too, that's really interesting is Tony's attitude and the way that he doesn't sign the trust agreement. I just thought was really interesting. He basically encourages her by saying he will sign everything, and she's ecstatic, and then he doesn't even bring up he thinks it's a bad idea. He just doesn't do it, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I know.
As a character decision.
It's so passive aggressive.
It's really strange. It actually just seems like such a
and then saying I gave you 2 out of 3.
Right.
And then, of course, that prompts Carmela to have 0 more lines in this episode, basically.
Right. And also prompts Tony to, go on to a scene where after he orders her flowers and he gets his favorite time of eating mayo meat.
Yeah, his favorite. Well, those flowers, interestingly, there was some really blue ones and some really yellow ones. And the blues and the yellows are really standing out to me. Earlier, we see Tony when he first goes to the racetrack wearing this really blue shirt underneath a brown jacket. Anyways, I'll talk about them.
Yeah.
I'll talk about them later because I want to keep talking about Adriana really quickly.
Yeah.
The other scene that I love with Adriana is when they like the agent Severino, is that her name?
I think so.
Who like is at the mall, right? And she's there with Cosette.
Yeah.
And then they're sitting in the car and Ade's face is like half black. Like it's like this really strongly lit scene.
Yeah.
She has this like half face on, right? And they're clearly like just they know she's going to say something, right? They know that by like making her feel this fearful and followed and whatever, that she's going to give them something. Now, she's not giving them anything really. And again, like we were talking about how like it sucks that she probably like had she not said anything, she would have been totally fine, right? Like they had nothing on her.
Well, they had like a little bit, but you know that like the institution of the mob could have protected her. I mean, somebody selling cocaine in her club, like you know that like their lawyers, they would be able to.
Any lawyer could probably like, you know, like she could get her own lawyer and do it too. It's not
and she wouldn't even have to probably.
No,
like
exactly.
they would be protecting her because they want to look out for somebody like that because that is a liability for them.
But then she gives them this information on Patsy's suits.
Yeah.
And then, so she tells them that piece of information. I don't know. It's just like, I just find like this is really, I mean, Chris and Adriana are two of my favorite characters for sure. And like, I've always felt that way and I feel this way this season. For some reason, they really speak to me. We have her face kind of half in the dark. She's talking about Patsy's suits. We have her like the chair that Vito broke, she's falling off of it, right? We kind of see how like her life is about to really change, right? Like she's not the same person that she was before the end, like in last season, for example. She's really on this different trajectory. And I love the scene where she suggests Santa Barbara to Christopher.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying, like, she keeps talking about this negative shit, right? He says it twice to her.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is that, you know, like, Chris and Adriana, like, what their relationship represents or, like, what they represent. But they're two characters that are really, really different than the rest of the mob guys and the rest of the mob wives. Like, there are things about them that are really different. And one of the parts is kind of brought up, like Christopher does have this like weird superstitious side, right? Like he brings up the bird, he brings up that he's kind of cursed, right? And like he can't have this negative shit around him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think like, for both of them, right? Like you really see that this is, you know that nothing good is going to happen. Nothing good is going to come of this. Yeah. Yeah,
I think for me, there's two things that I identify coming out of this that are big parts of this episode. And those are the aspects of isolation and also underhanded manipulation. And so, yeah, like when you were bringing up like Vito falling out of the chair, Patsy and the gang laughing at him, Chris laughing at Adriana, like these characters have no compassion. They're pretty stuck in their own world, of self-betterment and whatever kind of like impacts them and helps them. But they don't really have any EQ. They don't really have any empathy. And I think they just think that bad things that happen to other people are kind of funny. And I think that Adriana's just increasingly isolated.
Yeah.
As are a lot of characters. Like we see characters, like you said, the shot of Carmela in the house, the shot of Tony at the end with the animals, which we'll get to later. But there's a lot of characters that even if they've found ways to cope with their isolation, they are still alone. Or Tony with the flowers that he orders and eating with flowers across, but not Carmela, and eating his meat mayo.
Yep.
You know, I think characters are alone.
Yeah, well, in that last scene we have of Adriana, right, she comes home from the Crazy Horse. She takes off her top, and she's wet, right, because it's raining. We have this very strong rain that happens in this episode, which I also think is important as a symbol. Yeah. Or at least in like the arc of this episode as itself, like we have this whole kind of back half that takes place in the rain. Yeah. But Adriana, she's wet. She comes in. There's no words, right? Like nothing spoken. She comes in. She takes off her stuff. She goes and she uses Chris's heroin, right? Like she kind of even like sneakily like goes into his drawer, right? Like it's not hers. And that's the only thing she could really do to cope.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what else is she going to do? She's facing this. Who could she tell? Who could she go to?
Yeah.
And that's why when she's like, eat shit, Danielle.
Must feel
that was like, like she really felt like she had found a true connection with somebody. Mm-hmm. And that's what got her into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the fact that the FBI maybe even knew that and was preying on that.
Totally.
And that's why
Absolutely.
it works so
I know.
well.
That's I always, before this YouTube channel got shut down that I really liked, the one that put together all the characters' story arcs, they had one with Agent Harris. And he's one of those interesting characters that you like really don't see. I think his whole YouTube video was like 30 minutes,
probably,
kind of thing of airtime throughout the whole series. But his manipulation, we see him today, like looking at his watch, like he knows exactly how to get her to do what he wants, right? And he's the one kind of like the ringleader of these scare tactics that they're using right now. Anyways,
I think in that specific instance too, where they're in the car, I think that's an example of they know that Adriana knows that information, and that's why they're targeting her and kind of like weaponizing it. Like they know that if they stall, that she will respond with something, because now they're actually kind of like lowering the bar of information and that she might actually have, and they know she has.
Yeah.
And so they can actually kind of like build up from there and make sure that she actually will tell them things. There was an interesting series of events and shots that I really liked in this that I wanted to talk about as kind of emblematic of that manipulation. And that was starting with Tony early on in the episode talking about running Pyomai not as a front runner, which is information that then has effects throughout the episode, even though there was this speed trap and Pyomai actually won that first race not to do with Tony's advice.
Totally.
But I thought that concept of not running as a front runner was really interesting and maybe related to a lot of the bigger things that are happening in this episode. So that idea of like holding back, kind of running with the pack, but holding something, to be kind of
unveiled.
Unveiled later. And then to kind of like bolt forward and win is interesting, because I think a lot of characters are doing that. They're hiding their true intentions. They're hiding their true motives and their actions until they actually want to like strike.
Yeah.
And like it's like with Janice waiting to strike when she knows that Bobby's in a good mood, and she tries to like lure him in with Karen Ziti. And there were some interesting edits.
Mikey's wife, Jojo Palmise.
Jojo. Yeah. Janice does a good job of getting Jojo out of there.
Yeah, she does.
So we have that scene where Tony's talking about not running Pyomai as a front runner. Then we go to Janice at Junior's, which is interesting because she's talking about like, what was it? The thing that Bobby was supposed to take care of.
Right.
Like she's trying to find out information from Junior, and she's trying to get involved in this world and be able to have information that then she can use to weaponize against Bobby to get what she wants.
Yeah.
So there's some interesting like underhanded connotations there.
Yeah.
And then there's an edit, or not. I mean, then we kind of have the next scene where Tony and Carmela are in that exchange about the trust.
Yep.
And he's just so not straight up. It's like we said, like it's a weird situation where he deals with it in an odd way, where he goes to sign, he gets her excited, but then he doesn't want to do the trust. But there's no honesty. There's nothing straight up about it. They don't discuss it.
Yep.
He kind of has a weird underhanded way of getting what he wants without really accepting any alternatives. I'm not signing it.
Do you think Carmela, like, what do you think her, I know what her motivations are for like wanting to have a trust, right? Like she wants to be protected. But like, do you think that this is a manipulation on her part, or is she just...
That's a really good question. You could make an argument. I think
I'm just
mostly
thinking out
she's
loud.
just... It's what she says.
Yeah.
I think, of all the characters, she probably is one of the most honest and straight up. I think she's worried about what happens if Tony dies, and she's worried about their kids.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know the finances, and she just wants to feel like there is something established.
Yeah.
But that's my interpretation.
Yeah. I was thinking.
Because there are more and more rifts in their marriage as the show goes on, and this season really deals with them, especially as the season goes on.
Yeah.
So that is possible that, you could make an argument that she's just trying to protect herself, and she's being underhanded. And potentially she's a character who even is like lying to herself. Like maybe there's some kind of like psychological repression or something, like where she actually is doing it to protect herself in the case of a divorce, even if she's not recognizing that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking if that
Yeah.
were the case. Yeah, which is like that would be smart of her to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, interesting. And then also from that scene, we kind of move into another scene of a couple where the trust is kind of questioned because we have additional information, and that's Adriana faking her fever.
Yes.
So it's this aspect of not being straight up
Yeah.
and kind of manipulating your image for, you know, what serves you. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting that there was kind of like a sequence of scenes there that all kind of were guided by characters manipulating conversations and events for their own purposes.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of this like blue and yellow thing going on, and I can't quite figure it out. But often, like Carmela in the early episodes and in the last episode, I think even the one before, we've seen Carmela wearing a lot of yellow, and it really is like when she's around the family, and this sign of like, you know, when their marriage, and she's feeding him tomato sauce, and like. And we see her after he doesn't sign those papers. We see her go back to wearing blue for the whole rest of the episode.
Yeah.
And like I said, like Tony's wearing a lot of blue in this episode as well. Like
There's
really
a couple really
vibrant
interesting when he's at the
blues.
racetrack and he's
Yeah.
getting financial information. He has this like very vibrant blue shirt on and
Yeah.
like a blue pocket square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, like the flowers were all in blue and yellow.
Oh, maybe Carmela's doing meth. Oh wait, no,
Right,
that's
that's a
Breaking
different
Bad.
show.
Oh, fuck, that's a
Shoot.
different show. Sorry,
What was yellow in Breaking Bad?
meth.
What was blue then? No, blue was meth.
No, it was yellow. Yeah.
What was
remember
blue?
that? Oh God, I'm just going back a long way.
Anyways.
Stay tuned for our Breaking Bad podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to do that next. And then, yeah, so I don't know. And then so we have all these scenes around Pyomai, right? And the racetrack and stuff like that. So maybe we want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to talk about just before we
Yeah.
maybe move on to that as kind of a final topic is what are Carmela and Tony chasing? And I feel like there's this like aspect of greed or something that kind of like guides them. Like, what's their motivation? Like, there's that scene where Tony's getting money from Ralph and he just keeps his hand
Yeah,
out.
that's
And
a
he just
pretty
keeps on
wild
getting
scene.
more and more
Yeah.
money. And then Carmela's focus on the stock, like, there's something about it where, you know, and or you know, when she's upset, she says the stock's split. Like, it's
We're
too
too
late.
late, yeah.
I just feel like both of them are just kind of blindly infatuated with money in a way where, like, I wonder, like, what are they chasing? What are their goals? What are their aspirations in that domain? Like, I feel like they're just both kind of greedy
Yeah.
in a certain way. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing to defend other than that. Like, they just
Yeah.
both want money to come to themselves, which kind of plays into these other topics we've been talking about in this episode. Like, people just want stuff for them. They want
Yeah.
things to solve their problems. They want stuff. And they don't really think about other people.
Well,
Because
we even see like that cousin Brian or whatever, like Tony brings him along to like, he's like in the same room as Ralphie and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
he's giving these stock tips, which I don't think you're supposed to, I don't know where he got that stock tip from.
Right.
You know? So we even
seems
like,
questionable.
like even this guy that Carmela's kind of like relying on, like to go like legit,
Yeah.
right? Like there's nothing, they can't do anything in a totally legit way.
Right.
Just because of the nature of that, right? So
Yeah.
it is kind of like you're saying, like, yeah, like what are they chasing and at what cost are they chasing it,
Yeah.
basically? Like, again, like what's the cost of Pyomai racing, you know, whatever, if like the cost of being the pack leader or whatever they called it.
Yeah. Front runner.
Front runner, yeah. I was like, what's the word I'm looking for? Then now they're injured and the vet's there and blah,
Right.
blah, blah, right? Like, so at what cost?
The vet won't work until they get their money.
Yeah. What's the cost of chasing these
Yeah.
things?
Junior won't pay attention to his trial because the caricature artist drew him in a way that he
Yeah.
doesn't like.
There's also like a weird Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood reference for Junior. I should throw that
Which
in
is
there
interesting
right now.
considering the Mr. Ruggiero's neighborhood.
They say it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and then Junior puts on this sweater and zips it up. It's very, very Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I don't
Yeah.
get that one. Should throw that in there before we
Yeah.
talk about horses.
Okay, let's talk about horses.
Okay.
What do you think? What are some of your thoughts?
I don't know. I have like a lot of different thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still trying to work through them. I feel like horses, I think it's kind of tied in. I think like maybe not all animals, and I have to think about how I'm classifying them, but there's something about horses that really remind me of like the dancers at the Bing, or like any of the like the workers at the construction site. Like it's just like another thing that is used by the mob until it breaks.
Interesting.
And like everyone else is in charge of riding them or manipulating them, right? Everyone has their own way of doing it. Like Tony is cheering really loudly, but Ralphie's like, tell that midget to use the whip or whatever.
Right.
Like does like at any cost, like doesn't matter the animal, right? Like,
yeah.
So I kind of see like, I don't know, in terms of like Ralphie and Tony, like it really highlights the difference with them, right? Kind of even going back to University, right, with Tracy, that like they both have this different way of dealing with the people that work for them or the people that they're involved with, right? And no matter kind of which way, like no matter whose advice is followed or who like, you know, whatever Richie does versus what Tony does, the end result is still the same. There's still like pain,
right?
And they both grapple with it really differently too. So there's something with that for me.
That's really interesting.
I haven't really fleshed it out yet.
Yeah,
but...
well, for me, actually, it plays into something that I was thinking about. And for me, it was like these animals are an opportunity for these characters to show compassion in a kind of cheap way. Characters who do not have compassion in an episode where we're constantly examining how they are characters who are devoid of compassion. It's a way for them to get comfort from feeling compassionate.
Right. It's like an easy way to feel that.
Exactly.
Or something.
And there were some references that really got me thinking about that. Ralph is talking about the vet. These guys, no compassion for the animals.
Right.
And when Tony gets the call, this crying call, and it's something that he can do something about through money, there's some really interesting choices that they made in this episode. He's watching the History Channel, and there's Churchill, and it's triumphant in this kind of like epic war moment. And the music that comes on is kind of like epic and heroic. And Tony goes to show compassion. But the hilarious thing is that Carmel's there and he's just leaving her. And he's not dealing with any of these problems. And I think that for him, the horse is something that he really dumps his affections in, like he did with the ducks, because there's no reciprocation. There's no complication.
It's not complicated.
There's no human interaction. And it's a way for him to feel like Churchill. There's this kind of like scoring of the scene where Tony gets to feel like a hero, where at the end of the day what he's really doing is leaving his wife. He's going to help this horse, which is nice, but he's still a horrible person. But he's made to feel like a good person, like a hero, like a compassionate person.
No, I think that kind of does get into some of the like feelings that I was having too. But and
I think it's
I do think it is though, this manipulation and this using, right? Like that there's I think you're so right about the like easy, like, you know, easy way to feel heroic or compassionate thing, but I think like again, like it's like at what cost to those creatures / those people, right? And there are these, like we even like again to compare it to Tracy, right? Like Tony does show some compassion in those moments, right? Like they connect on this very kind of basic level. But yeah, he's still culpable in her ultimate death, right? Like he has Ralphie around. So it's like he's made him a captain. At what cost does this compassion?
And interestingly, like we brought up before, there's 3 examples of horse in this episode. There's the club, Crazy Horse, there's the animal, Pyomai, and there's the drug, heroin. And not only are all bringing comfort, but all are destructive, kind of in their own way. I mean, going forward, we have the animal, Pyomai. Like we're also like setting up a greater conflict between Ralph and Tony. Some big things are going to be coming. The drug is obviously destructive to all those who are engaging in it. The club is setting up criminal charges against Adriana and possibly members of the family.
You can be very comforted there, though, by listening to No Soap Radio.
No Soap Radio. Great band. Well, how about our last scene?
So we had someone email us.
We loved it.
And they asked us to talk about that last scene.
Ioannis. Thanks for getting in touch, Ioannis.
And I think that's such an interesting thing to think about. He asked. She asked.
We don't know. Sorry, you us.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting in touch.
Let us know. But to kind of project the implication of it going forwards, hopefully we'll come back to that scene as well when we talk about our next episode. But I do think that last scene, again, paralleled with the other scene with Carmela that I was mentioning earlier in the episode, I feel like it is this real sense of you feel very constrained or contained by the shot, right?
Yeah.
Like you're in this space. Yeah. There is this opening, right? You can kind of see outside and there's this rain falling. But we have this like warmth and coziness in this space, right? Even though it's kind of falsely created, right? Like the horse has been drugged. Yeah. But Tony's like kind of like calmly sitting there and looking at it, right?
He's
like,
also smoking a cigar, which is often like a symbol of him being in control that we've seen a lot throughout the show.
Yeah. And it is kind I mean, like just as a photograph, I think it's like a really powerful image, right? With Tony kind of above the horse, which is rare. You're never really bigger than horses, right?
Yeah.
Like they're usually, we see him, like petting Pyomai's face earlier, but then they're on the floor. And there's this warmth. And then the goat comes in. Yeah. We didn't talk about the goat yet, but that we have this other creature entering the space. I feel like the goat is kind of like Ralphie.
Okay.
I feel like there's
who we've
something...
had associated with the devil before, so that's a classic symbol.
That's what I said to you after the episode. I'm like, well, goats are often associated with the devil, and Ralphie's often associated with the devil as well. It's kind of this like nice, playful creature. It has kind of Ralphie's high-pitched voice. I feel like he kind of sounds goat-like.
Right.
But I think it kind of is like it's this this trinity of some sort, this like weird trinity of these three elements, right? Like Tony and Ralphie and Pyomai, which again I think represents something a lot bigger, but kind of setting up this structure for some of the episodes to come in the season without giving too much away.
And also like just like the environment outside, the fact that Tony is sheltered right now, albeit very isolated, but this like pouring downfall outside that is there's something very kind of foreboding about that. I feel like
we had a rainstorm in college also. I'm trying to think about other times where there was a rainstorm. Remember when Father Phil comes over?
That's right.
And it's like pouring rain there.
Yeah.
There is something about rain that I wanted to track too, and just the way like Tony was moving through the rain and Carmela being like, "What? It's raining." Yeah. Right? And Adriana coming home and being soaking wet in the rain. So there was something about that, like this, like, and it was like so like such a golden lighting that was in this. Yeah. Kennel? What do they call it? Stable?
Stable, I guess.
I don't know a lot. I'm not a big horse fan, but like. Stable, with this like hay and whatever, and then this goat jumping up.
It is just such an amazing scene, though. Like just the atmosphere that's created, the music that comes on. Yeah. It is at the same time this combination of feelings. Like it's foreboding, comforting, isolating. There's a lot. There's really a lot.
I know.
There's really a lot of things that they're putting out there, but I feel like it's like so beautifully tied together by all the things that they're dealing with in this episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So. And I think like it sets off, it's this, for those of you who haven't seen this show before, it does set off a series of events that we're going to see happening. So, this injury.
And we kind of start to see season 4 kick into higher gear, from this point on. Yeah.
And I think the scenes, like, I think just to, around Pyomai, those scenes of the guys, like, really cheering for Pyomai, like, being so animated and so, like, you never see them be that excited about anything, right? Yeah. Like, they're, like, going crazy. Like, come on, Pie, come on, girl. Like, they're, like, just going nuts. And they're so happy about those winnings of that money. I don't know. There was something about those scenes. Also, the weird like footage of horse races that were kind of grainy footage, like TV footage. So that also.
It's like, didn't you guys have a lot of money at this point?
Yeah. Well, and that that they're not really watching anything. They're not watching a real race. Right.
It is an interesting decision because it really does like suspend the realism.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about those scenes where they're cheering that, like, it is kind of like hyper, I don't know, like the colors are really bright and I don't know.
Well, compared to how
strange
like
about them.
muted and grainy everything is when you see the actual horses.
Yeah, and we know that Tony does like come alive around animals. Like he really does love animals.
Just like Adriana with Cosette, you know. So after she does horse, she's just kind of like cuddling with Cosette, her dog. Another example of like her getting comfort from an animal.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Let's see what happens in the rest of the season. We'll be back soon.
Oh, wow. Okay, we're
well, you know what we're going to do tonight? We're going to do our very first Sopranos a marathon.
I think we've done this before, but it was
not back to back.
Daytime.
Yeah.
We did it on a weekend.
We did 2 in a row? Wow.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, well.
Well, I just wanted to see if there's anything else I wanted to say.
Oh, man.
I guess
I'm
not.
sorry.
I guess we're done.
No. What else do you have to say?
No,
Is
that's
there things?
it. No, we're done.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay, we're done. Well, now we're going to do the next episode.
What is it?
I don't know. We're about to find out. Come back in 3 days for you and 2 minutes for us, and we'll be doing some more Sopranos.
Okay.
And thanks for listening.
Yeah, feel free to write us an email.
Yeah. Thanks to you, Honest. We appreciated your insight.
Yeah, and we'll cover it more in episodes to come.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk
bye.
soon. Bye.